Welcome back to the channel, and now that the dust has settled on the URC semi-finals, I thought I'd just take a look back through the rearview mirror and dissect a little bit more Glasgow and their famous win to reach the final at Thomond Park against Munster, and to try and dissect where it went wrong for Munster. Before I get onto the actual rugby, I just want to send some positive thoughts to the individual who accidentally pressed the button to put this on the big screen and must have felt absolutely mortified. It doesn't look great, but I've worked in live rugby long enough to know that these things have to be made ahead of the match. There would have been one saying Munster v Leinster. No one was ever meant to see it, and I do feel for the person that accidentally put that up on the big screen. But as it was, nothing should overshadow the fact this was a really tense semi-final. I mean, the tension sometimes spilled over into errors and mistakes, and I'll get onto that from a Munster perspective in a bit. But this was a proper ding-dong of a semi-final. Two teams that had a lot of respect for each other, no love lost. There's a lot of history between these sides, and you felt that when you saw Sione Tuipulotu, deservedly man of the match after the game, when you saw his face on the full-time whistle, you got a real sense of what this means. And Munster will be absolutely devastated. They're now only going to be the holders of their title for the next 5 days, and then it will be a new name on the URC trophy. And I guess Munster maybe should have realised it's not going to be our year, because they came top seeds. And I know it's only the third year of the URC competition, but no top seed has even made the final. Because Stormers won it from second place in the first season. Munster won it from fifth place last year, and it'll be second versus fourth in the final out in Pretoria at the weekend. Two hard-as-nails teams, two massively committed teams. And I talked about in the build-up to this game, and again, get your comments down below. What do you think? How do you reflect on it? I'll go through each team in turn, and then we'll throw a little bit of light towards the final coming up in the days ahead. And if you get value from the channel, if you appreciate it, give the video a thumbs up, help spread the word, because this URC competition deserves to be seen by more people, and hit subscribe on the channel as well. So I talked in the build-up to this game how much better Munster's attack has got this season. That's the reason they were top seed. They've layered that attack on top of what were already really solid foundations, spearheaded by Jack Crowley, and a really good midfield partnership who were reunited, Nankyvel and Frisch. And Glasgow, I talked about how good their defence was and has been. Against Stormers, it was stout. And that's where this game, ultimately, if I had to bubble this game down to one element, I said it was going to be Glasgow's defence against Munster's attack, and Glasgow's defence won. Munster had lots and lots of possession. They just weren't accurate. They didn't execute in the way they have done this season. And part of that is the fact that Glasgow were, as they have been all season, just smashing people in defence. And that ultimately, I think, is what made the difference. Could be a perfect send-off for George Turner, just as it was a fairy tale moment for Peter Amani a year ago. It wasn't pretty at times, but it was very, very tense. As for Munster, let's talk about, if you're a Munster fan, how do you make sense of? Now you've reflected on it, had a couple of days to sit with it, where do you think the game was lost? Because I've got a few thoughts. I think Munster were guilty of forcing it a little bit, looking for the miracle pass sometimes. I talked about how good their attack has been, but patience is a virtue sometimes, and it just felt like it was being forced, and errors were happening as a result. They didn't take advantage of the yellow card periods. When Richie Gray was off the pitch with his yellow card, Glasgow actually won that period 7 points to 3. That was massive in the context of the game when you look back. And the third element of the game, and I've got a picture of RG Snyman there on the field. Actually, it was one of his miracle passes that actually led to Munster's try. But the bomb squad did not work. I did, in the preview before the weekend, I did have my question marks over the strategy. I could see it, but I thought maybe it would leave the door open to let Glasgow get a foothold and confidence in the game, and that's how it really panned out. When you look at Gavin Coombs, you look at RG Snyman, and you can't help but wonder what might have been had they been starting rather than on the bench. When you've got a squad as stacked as, say, a South African national team is, I get the bomb squad more so, because you've just got incredible player replacing incredible player, and someone like Quagga Smith can just do a brilliant role for his team for half an hour, just all action. When you're Munster, and you've got really good players, and Munster have increased the quality of their squad, but Wycherley to Snyman is a big change, and spending 50 minutes without RG Snyman on the pitch and letting Glasgow get themselves a real strong foothold in the game, and also not having Gavin Coombs on and letting that all-international Glasgow pack get a real foothold in the game, it looks like it backfired. But then, hindsight is always 20/20, isn't it? As for Glasgow, lots and lots to like about their performance. I've already mentioned Sione Tuipulotu, strong carrier, but soft hands. I mean, when I look at the Glasgow team, how did Australia, bearing in mind what a basket case that rugby union is, I mean, there's Emmanuel Meafu, there's one, Sione Tuipulotu and Jack Dempsey. How on earth, Australia, did you let those 3 players go? What were you thinking? What were you doing sleeping on those players? And fair play to the Scottish Rugby Union for spotting the heritage, the grandparentage of those players and getting them in, because they were class. They were really, really good, as was Rory Darge, as was Kyle Steyn. He was brilliant against Stormers last week when he came back from injury, and he was great again. The defence was awesome. Glasgow took their chances, and Tom Jordan, that fly half, I mean, he's hard as nails. Glasgow are a nails team, and they're going to need to be going out to the Bulls next week. I just thought there was a lot of spirit in that team, and they've got a lot of good players, but they're better than the sum of their parts, and I was massively impressed by that. I think the Alex Nankerville red kind of summed things up a little bit. Just top 2 inches weren't there for Munster on the day, partly because Glasgow's defence was so oppressive, but yeah, I mean, you could argue there was a little bit of milk in it going on for when Nankerville got his card. I think he deserved the card, and it didn't really matter whether it was yellow or red anyway, because it was after 70 minutes. He was going to be out for the rest of the game. But one thing just to watch is the diving and rolling around and trying to kind of milk it. I hope rugby doesn't go too far down that line, and I want referees to try and get on top of that if they can. So yeah, really, I thought the bench was going to make the difference for Munster. I thought it'd be tight, but I thought the bench would make a difference. I think Munster were below the expected level, and that was more so in that first 50 minutes. And Glasgow exceeded expectations throughout the game, including when their bench came off. And there was one moment that kind of captured that. The Nankerville red card summed up that Munster weren't quite thinking with absolute clarity, and their accuracy wasn't great in the top 2 inches. And Max Williamson, the young lock, coming off, and there was one moment where he absolutely levelled R.G. Snyman, and I was worried about the mismatches from a Glasgow's perspective with the bench and the Munster bench, and actually that moment kind of summed up that they were on it that particular day. So yeah, very, very impressed with Glasgow. Well played on getting a final, and yeah, I mean, in terms of just briefly looking ahead to the final, and I'll have more previews of the final coming up in the days ahead. But I've just kind of chucked a little combined team together based on the players, and I didn't spend too much time thinking about this because I will give this a bit more examination when the teams are announced as we get closer to the weekend. So I don't know who's going to be playing, but just at a glance, if you look at the Bulls versus Glasgow, it's pretty clear where the potential advantage here is. The pack. And, you know, like Elric Lowe's been absolutely brilliant. In fact, Rory Darge, Scotland International class. I might change that to Elric Lowe. So a lot of these are 50-50 calls, to be perfectly honest. Same with Ambrose Papier and George Horn. 50-50 call for me. So really, I would basically pick the Bulls pack, and I would probably pick the Glasgow backline. However, having said that Ambrose Papier is a 50-50 call, the fact that the Bulls will have, hopefully, Willie LaRue is fit, 10, 15, and 9's a touch and go. And also David Creel in the centre has been really, really good. And had Arensa and Moody been fit, they would both be the wingers. But all that said, the point being, a pack and 2 decision makers in Huisson and LaRue, hopefully fit, that's a pretty tough ask to get past if you're Glasgow. A great midfield isn't going to mean a lot if you don't have really good ball from scrum time, from line-out time. So it looks a big challenge going away to Loftus Versfeld against the Bulls. They will start favourites, but Glasgow, as I've just said, they are better than the sum of their parts. They have got so much spirit, and that is how they ended up in the final. Apologies again if you've been waiting for videos on that particular match. Just a consequence of what was going on at the weekend. You know from the channel, I get stuff up as quickly and as soon as I can. and I fully intend to in the days and weeks ahead with club rugby, with international rugby. So I'd love it if you'd hit subscribe on the channel. Tell me what you think in the comments below. I'll see you on the next one.